John, over in the NL East, Luis Arraez is hitting about 420 on the season, and we haven't seen a player hit 400 since Ted Williams. And I know we're a month into the season, but is there any chance at all that we see a player hit 400 in the current state of baseball, what we see right now?
Not really. I thought this would happen in Colorado back in the day when the outfield's huge and everyone's worried about the home run record being broken in Colorado. I said, no, what's going to happen is someone's going to hit 400 in Colorado before they break the home run record. There's just too much space to cover. But the style of pitching that we have today, I think you could safely say it's not going to happen. But he's my favorite hitter to watch. And I've always said that because in this day and age where we got bombers and exit velocity and all the different sexy stats, he's a pure hitter. And you can't defend a pure hitter. And so you take away the shift and you give him the ability to not strike out, which he rarely does. I love watching him play. And I think there's going to be more of these kind of players come in our game to combat the high velocity. There's ways to combat it. Just the ways we're doing it, you're not going to be able to combat it. I get it. And analytically, everyone's got the perfect angle and launch and home run and swing and miss and strikeouts don't matter. You tell that to a championship team. You tell that to a team that wins the championship, they're not even in the top 10 in strikeouts. So there is an approach to this style of pitching. We just don't have enough players that can change this style of pitching. Yeah. So until that happens, pitchers are going to be way ahead of all these guys who are trying to slug. And Arraez is a throwback to Rod Carew. I know there's been a bunch of similarities or examples of that. And I just think he can do whatever he wants because he controls the barrel of the bat and he's not trying to hit it through the roof. And will he hit 400? Probably not, but he's going to flirt with it a lot longer than anybody else would.
Do you think these rule changes, specifically the restriction of the shift, will start the process of getting hitters back in a different mindset? And maybe it's going to take some time, but over time, seeing some hitters more with the approach of Luis Arraez because, well, there's not three guys lined up exactly where I always hit the ball. So maybe we can start getting back to a shift in an approach where you do have that Luis Arraez type approach at the plate.
I mean, I hope so, but we're so ingrained with this technology and this information. I'll give you a great example in another sport. They're giving up layups in the NBA to shoot three-pointers. They're literally giving up layups. They're not taking the two-point shot.
Yeah.
And so will the NBA go back to the big man dominating down low in the two? I don't think so. Not the way the direction the NBA is going. Yep. And so baseball's kind of followed that same model of they'd rather have 6 guys in the lineup that hit 40 home runs and strike out 200 times. I think that's a flawed philosophy, but it's a philosophy that works to get you to the postseason. The pitching right now and the effort that has been put into modeling and shaping pitching is too far ahead of hitting. And until hitters make that necessary adjustment in philosophy, not in getting bigger, stronger, and swinging the bat at a greater speed, it's a philosophy and an angle of attack. And if that angle of attack is still with the launch angle, premise, then no. So they'll sprinkle in your hitters, and you're going to see some like this, but you won't see an influx. And I think any sport that has decent balance and adjusts to the trends are the teams that go ahead and advance farther. But if you're a copycat and just doing what everyone else is doing, then you're just rolling the dice as far as I'm concerned and trying to get a little bit luckier than the next person. Everyone has the same information. Everyone has the same, technology now. It's who's going to zig when everyone else is zagging.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be certain teams that are going to try and do that. And I think they're going to be successful. After the All-Star break, I'm going to start trying to hone in on what teams I think are taking advantage of the new rules. It's going to take a while to determine who's really taking advantage of it, but there's going to be some significant teams that I think are going to stand out against the rest.
It's been interesting so far this year. You think of lefties and you think that lefties typically benefit a little bit more from the restriction of the shift rule, but I've had a couple of different guys on the show so far and asked them specifically about it. One, Rowdy Tellez, believes it has actually hurt him, at least to the point when we were talking. He doesn't think it's benefited him at all. And Mike Yastrzemski, on the other hand, who you wouldn't think he would be one of the guys that it would typically benefit as much, has said he really feels like it has. So it's been interesting talking to players about whether they think these new rules are benefiting them or not.
Look, I know enough about hitting to be dangerous. I'm going to be shocked if the universal answer isn't it's helping left-handers big time. I mean, I'll be shocked. If you don't change your approach, then it's not going to help you.
Yeah.
I mean, but if you hit the ball hard and you make contact, it has to help you. You can't defend it. And that's the thing. We've got these barrels metrics. We've got all these different things. But you know what? I've said it forever, and they finally did it. You show me the guy that has the best average velocity. I'm talking average, with 0 being a swing and a miss, a 0. Every guy who makes contact, what'll end up happening is a 50, 60, 70 mile an hour average will be your best overall hitter. And I guarantee you that Arraez is in that category. Because so what if you get one at 120, get lucky and hit one 510 feet, but then your 4 bats in between, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
That 0 is going to bring down your average. So to me, it's still about, can you square up the ball? Can you make enough contact to be rewarded, especially with the rule changes that exist today? So, you know, the LeMayus of the old, he was always up there. Your pure hitters are still going to be the ones you're going to want at the plate with a man on third and less than 2 outs.
To be fair, but at the time Rowdy came on, he was hitting like 140, and then he got hot. So I bet his answer's a little bit different right now.
Yeah.
And I saw something literally this week that last year on hard hit ground balls to the right side, Shohei Ohtani was batting 180 on those balls. This year so far, he's batting 300 on those same ground balls. So it's already making a huge difference. Last one for you, along the lines of Luis Arraez, but is there a player that you remember that sticks out facing that just kind of had a different approach than everybody else? Sort of like I think more guys back then had approaches similar to Luis Arraez maybe, but anybody that he sticks out to that he reminds you of facing?
Well, I don't know if he reminds me of facing, but Ichiro always stuck out. I mean, he had an approach that was so unique. He kept the bat in the zone. He could kind of drift forward, make contact, chop it, beat it out. And as I'm told, he could hit a homer every swing in BP if he wanted to. And so his style of hitting would still be successful today. Anybody that can keep the bat in the zone against high velocity and not try to lift, I call it lift, clean, and separate, try to swing for the moons, is going to have an approach. Dave Magadan had an approach in my era. You know, Dave Magadan hit in college, hit in the big leagues, stayed back, looked like he was sitting in a chair, didn't exert a bunch of energy. And the greatest of all time, of course, Tony Gwynn. So Tony Gwynn could do whatever he wanted to do. And I remember Ted Williams saying, you got to hit more home runs. He could if he wanted to and sacrifice a little average. But when you're hitting 360 your whole career and you're getting on base and you're doing the things that was needed at that time, Tony Gwynn was the elite. So I think there's a place for it in the game, no doubt. And they just don't groom players to do this, so it's harder to find.
Yeah. And
he's been this kind of play, and now he's getting his chance to play at a high rate now with the Marlins.
How'd you do against Tony Gwynn in your career?
Not good. 444 he hit over his career. I still think the greatest stat in the history of sports. Maddox, Glavine, Pedro Martinez, and me, I want to say faced him over 330 times, okay? We struck out over 12,000 batters combined. We struck him out 3 times.
All of Pedro, you combined?
All of us combined. Pedro and Greg Maddox, 0. Glavine got him twice. I don't even remember getting him once, but I guess I got him once. And he struck out less in 1 year than guys strike out in a week. And again, I know it's 2 totally different eras, so it's apples and oranges. But he was unique. He was elite. And I'll tell you what I would have done if I could go back in time. I would throw every pitch right down the middle and see what he could do. Because any pitch you threw down and in, hooked it down the line, down and away, floated it over to third baseman, low, he'd hit it up the middle. I would throw every pitch right down the middle and go, good luck.
I have heard a lot of Tony Gwynn stats. I have heard a lot of crazy Barry Bonds stats, but that one you just said might be one of the craziest stats I've ever heard.
It's by far, it's insane. And he hit over 400 on everybody but Glavine.
Yeah.
And so, you're just talking about an elite, studied the game, and that's the kind of capabilities that Arraez has right now in his style and approach. and what he's trying to do at the plate.